I am Carrie Clark, and I teach 7th and 8th grade English at SPA in the middle school. I think that my favorite thing is, this is going to sound cheesy, but it's true, the things that the students bring, like in all of the different ways that they bring them. So for example, yesterday there was a discussion I was having with my 7th grade class, and I kind of had an idea of how that discussion was going to go. It didn't go that way at all. It went in the direction that the students brought it in. The thing that I love about that is that I'm constantly surprised. I'm constantly finding that the students are taking things in deeper places and more interesting places than I originally imagined they would go. And that can happen with a piece of writing, or it can happen with discussion of a mentor text, or just kind of when we're all looking at a draft together, or even just individually one-on-one when I'm working with a student on a draft. Every single day I'm surprised by what the students bring that I wasn't expecting. So I think that's my favorite thing. It's magical. English is one of those weird subjects where it's almost like a crystal, and there are facets on the crystal, and there are all of these things that can be happening at any given time. And that happens in any English class. Those same facets of the crystal happen whether you're studying English as a 3rd grader. In some ways, similar things are happening when you're studying English as a 12th grader. It's all about looking at literature, looking at writing, talking about ideas, figuring out why a writer did a certain thing the way that they did it. And that's happening all across the K through 12 span of things. But in middle school, we kind of go through this progression, 6th, 7th, and 8th, where we're just deepening those skills at each level. Knowing that in 9th grade, we're going to be shifting from a choice-based curriculum to something where students are assigned texts that everyone's going to read, have a similar experience with. But what's preparing students so well for that in the middle school is that everybody is able to grow at the pace that they need to be growing at, instead of being forced into a one-size-fits-all. We're all reading this book, we're all reading these pages. Some people are going to read those pages more slowly, some people are going to read them more quickly, and everybody's able to grow. And the idea is that when they get to 9th grade, they're all going to have a stronger set of skills that are equipping them to read more challenging literature at that similar kind of pace that everybody else is reading at. Whereas in the past, we noticed that when we were all reading the same books in the middle school, some students were really struggling with those books, and that was keeping them from being able to grow. And some students were really ready for the next challenge, but they weren't able to have that next challenge because we were all sort of on the same page. And I think in the middle school, students are at such variability in their learning, and that really levels off more as you get older and you start to kind of catch up with each other, be in a similar place. Upper school still has room for growth and challenge and all of that stuff, but it happens differently. So that's a big way that people are prepared. But we're still working on the same skills that students are practicing in 9th and 10th and 11th and 12th grade, just in different ways. I think that when it is working the way that I want it to work, one of the best aspects of the curriculum is that students are doing things that real writers do. So even when you're writing an essay about a book, for example, hopefully you're being pushed to imagine an actual reader for that essay and an actual purpose for that essay beyond just your teacher and this assignment. But then when you look at the creative pieces, doing the work that actual writers do, throwing away some pieces because they're just not working for you, or trying something different and, going at a pace that works for you and not a pace that necessarily has to fit a timeline. And there are timelines, but the intention is that within those timelines, there's room for writers to do the things that writers actually do. Getting feedback and trying a variety of different ways of tackling a piece or different topics that you actually care about and that you come up with. That's not what happens usually in middle school English across the country. It's always like, we're all gonna work on this piece, and it's really for the teacher and not for the actual student, for the writer. So I think that that's huge. We talked about the book choice, but it has actually changed the culture in the middle school. This is a culture of readers, and everybody is handing books. You can see it all the time where someone's like, you should read this, and oh, I've got that, and now I've heard about this other book, and now I want to read that. When we were designing a playground years ago in the design thinking project, every single group decided that they needed to have a space for students to be able to read in their playground design. And that was like evidence of a cultural shift in the middle school, where it's sort of what we do, it's how we breathe. There could always be more of that too, but we always want to be able to read at recess. A lot of people do, for example, and just making that more normal for people if that's their choice. And there's been a cultural shift because of the program. When I used to teach a curriculum in middle school where all students read the same books, you try really hard to pick a book that's going to work for every student or most of the students in the grade in the class. We never could figure that out. And I didn't really talk about this before, but every single student, especially in 6th through 8th grade, I feel like there's such a variability in how people read at this age that every single student is needing to read a book that is at a level where they can progress. So when in middle school we're reading a variety of books and students are able to read the books that they're choosing, that are highly interesting to them, that they're motivated to read, they're actually growing as readers much faster than if they're reading a book that is either beneath them or above them. And so we talk a lot about the just right, that's what we want to be targeting all the time, and that's a big reason why. This is a time in students' lives, like nationally we know this, where people drop off on their reading. They actually stop reading because they start to have other things that are taking their attention. And so we made a commitment to saying we want students just to be reading a ton and every day, and building that reading habit and having that carry through, hopefully, not holding people back so that we're all on the same page and we're all reading the same book and you can't read ahead and we're all going to discuss just these pages. One of the things that I was worried we would lose when we went away from everybody reading the same book is the opportunity to see that everybody experiences a text differently. What one person brings to it adds to how another person was reading it, and discussing a text is a way that I learn how to be a better reader and thinker. And it also gives me an opportunity as a student or a participant in a discussion to try out my ideas and see if they actually carry any water. And if they don't, then I think I need to rethink that a little bit. I love that we have discussion around mentor texts, that we're all able to read and digest pretty quickly and then dig into them and unearth all of the things that we brought or took away from those texts. I also feel like it's really important for those to be pretty low risk, because I just want my students to get comfortable saying, here's a thought, or here's a question, or here's something that I was really confused by, because those are tools that they're going to continue to cultivate as they go through the upper school. And then discussion becomes part of what you're assessed on, and in a way that's much more intense, I would say, than middle school. In 7th and 8th grade, I want students to just be comfortable putting their ideas out there and have that opportunity over and over and over again.
I like that we get to choose what we get to write our short stories about, because I know in a lot of my friends' schools they have a set prompt and they all have to write about that. I just think it's a really good environment for reading and writing.
My name is Gracie and I'm in 8th grade. I think that it's really cool that we get to choose our own books, especially since in high school we have to all read a certain book and then discuss about that, so I think it's cool how we get the freedom now. I think it's cool that every trimester we have a certain type of writing, like poems or vignettes or short stories, because then we learn a variety of things to help us with our writing. And then I think, although a lot of people don't like FRPs, including me, I think that they're really going to help us in the long run for an upper school when we have to do papers and stuff. I think that it's really helpful to have class discussions because you hear what other people say and you can kind of relate and build off of that, and it kind of expands your horizons, and I learn a lot during class discussions about how people see writing.
Hi, I'm Quenby and I'm in 8th grade. So I'm a writer, and so I really enjoy learning new techniques via mentor texts to implement into my writing, and I like that I'm allowed to implement those in ways that still allow me to write in my style and write what I want to write. So I love that most of the assignments are very open-ended, and I really like that. By choosing our own books, we still learn things and we still have discussions about aspects of our respective books, but we still get to read things that we're interested in, and so we don't have to spend time on something that we feel is not fun or entertaining or worth our time. I think when we discuss books, I think that's very helpful, because a lot of times there's a starting prompt, but then the discussions are student driven, so wherever the discussion goes, the students take it in that direction, which I think is very helpful, because that means that the students are asking questions that are important to them, so then they can, which means that they would be more likely to implement the answers to those questions into their own writing, which I think is really cool. I mean, I think it's a very open environment, and it's safe you can express yourself through your writing, and you're not pressured to share it with anyone you don't want to share it with, which I think is really nice. And I think all of the teachers are very helpful in giving feedback, but they don't like micromanage, which I think is really great.